Hello, today we're going to look at how to make a program. Up till now, we've been working with the interactive interpreter, and that works for small projects where we're just trying to play around with some commands. But to make a actual Python program, we need to use a interactive development environment or integrated development environment or a text editor. And we're going to be using Visual Studio Code. So I usually start off by creating a directory. And I'm going to call this one Hello Python. And it's a good idea to start off with a directory and put your program inside of a directory, because later on we'll have multiple files, and that kind of keeps everything together. But we're just going to have one file here eventually. So for now, what we'll do is we'll create that directory, and then from within that directory, you can click Open with Code. And that will open up Visual Studio Code, and you'll notice that we're in this Explorer window. You may have some of these different links off to the left. The one that you want to be on is the Explorer, and this is basically exactly like your File Explorer. It's just in a little different format, but essentially this is just a File Explorer. It gives you the ability to create files and create folders, it does the same function as this. In fact, you can use either of these interchangeably. If I create a file here, it'll show up here. If I create a file here, it'll show up there. It's just a File Explorer. If I had started without being in there, I'm going to close this folder to show what this looks like. If you opened up Visual Studio Code just from the start, it will show up here. And the other way you can get to that folder is you can click on Open Folder and then find where that folder is located, and then click Select Folder, and it'll open it up that way too. So either way you can get to that folder. So we're going to make a Python program here. So what we'll do is we will click on here and create a new file, and we're going to call it Hello PY. And the .py tells the operating system and Visual Studio Code that this is a Python program. So you're going to want your Python programs to end in .py. And that will bring up the code editor here. If you close that accidentally, you can just double click on your program and Visual Studio Code will open it up. And so in here, I'm going to just do a print command. A print command basically just writes things to the screen. So I'm going to say print Hello World, which is often the first program we create. And then I'm going to say File, Save. Notice that you have shortcuts here. So what I recommend is it's often a good idea to try to memorize these shortcuts. And you can see this one's Control S. Until you know it, just open up the folder name and then close it, and then you can hit Control S and it will open up. So if I hit Control S, it should save my program. And then what I will do is I can go here and run. You can either run with debugging or without debugging. We're going to run without debugging by clicking on this. And with Python, this will open up a terminal, and you'll see the program run. So here it's telling me it's running hello py, and then we can see here that it says hello world, just like we said. We asked it to print hello world right here. So let's see what happens if we make an error. So with a print statement, you have to have quotes around the piece of text that you want to write. And you'll notice here that when we do that, we get these squiggle marks. And these squiggle marks basically are indications that there's an error. And if you hover over these, they will tell you what the error is. Hello is not defined. It's actually thinking that it's looking for a variable name. When we're printing just plain text to the screen, we have to have those around it. So it allows us to fix the code. The other thing about Python programming is that our code has to be, it is case sensitive. That means print with a lowercase p is not the same as print with a p. So if I were to, another way you can run your program is clicking this green button over to the right here. If I run it, it just gives me the error. Hey, I don't know what print is what Python's telling you down here. So we can correct that by making it just a p, and then I can run it again, and we see our program is now running just fine. Another thing that we're going to learn a little bit more detail later is that we can make these things called variables. So right now, this is called a string literal right in here. And basically, try to increase the font size a little bit. Basically what this, everything between the two quotes is just text. And this, so I can put anything I want in there, and Python will just say, oh, that's just a bunch of text that I need to do something with, in which, in this case, it's print that statement. I can also do something like this, where I can say message is equal to and now what's happened is this piece of text called hello world is stored in a variable called message. And instead of putting this directly in here, I can put message. So now we have a situation where now I'm storing this in this identifier that's a variable. You can see Python's telling you it recognizes MSG as a variable. And it's saying that what's stored in there is the literal hello world. That means this string, which is literal text, is stored in this variable. And when we say print, we're going to run this program again, we see it does the same thing. So no difference in effect between these two. It's just that I've temporarily stored this code into this variable. So let's say I wanted to, rather than running the whole program all at once, I wanted to step through this program and watch it execute one line at a time. We can do that with something called the debugger. So I'm going to click button here, and right in here in this gutter between these two windows, you'll see that you can put breakpoints in here just by clicking in here. So I'm putting a breakpoint on line 1 of my code. And then I'm going to run with debugging with F5. So when I click that, the first time this runs, it's going to ask you what kind of debugger do you want to use. And there's actually several different ways of coding in Python. We're going to say, well, this is a Python file, so we're going to pick this one. So now it'll run, and now it's in debugging mode. So right now what's happened is we can see this little yellow arrow. It says it's on line 1, and we have these options here. Step over, step into, and step out. We'll learn what step into and step out are later when we do functions. But for now, the thing that we're going to use a lot of is F10 that will run step by step, or continue, which will continue to run the program until it gets to another stop point. Since there's no more stop points, if we did that, it would complete running the program. But I'm going to hit this step over, which notice is a shortcut key, F10. So I'm going to actually use the shortcut key. And you'll notice that the arrow moved one line forward. So now we are on the next line of code. The other thing that we can see is that here we have a little list of what variables are in scope right now. And so message has now absorbed the value of hello world. Let's try that again. I'm going to stop the program, and then I'm going to run again. or start debugging using Python. And now I'm going to hit, notice that right now we have no variables defined here. These special variables are ones that are set by the system. We'll learn about those maybe a little later, but for now, nothing's been declared yet. When I hit F10, notice now message is created and it's got a value. And then I'm going to hit F10 one more time, and we'll see it actually does the print statement, and then it finishes the program. So that's the fundamentals of running a program in both, just with run without debugging and then start debugging. And so you're going to be using F5 and Control F5 a lot. So I recommend memorizing those. And you'll also, when you're in debug mode, be using step over quite a bit. So I recommend doing that as well. So those are the fundamentals of creating a program. Thank you very much.